TW. Hi, all of our fabulous, amazing panelists from all over the world. I am delighted to introduce you to Lauren, who is going to take it away and tell you all about the future of sustainability, COVID-19, and travel implications. Lauren.
Thank you, and a huge thank you to Cheryl and Anna for your support in organizing today's panel, and a huge thank you to everyone in the SATW community for taking the time to join us today. We're so grateful. I am going to now turn it over to Greg Miller. He is the Executive Director of CREST, which is the Center for Responsible Tourism. He will be moderating our panel today. So Greg, over to you.
Thanks, Lauren, and I appreciate very much the support from SATW as well as Lauren, you and your team at Alice Marshall Public Relations. It's really been instrumental in getting us together. As mentioned, I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Responsible Travel, as well as one of the founding co-founders of a new coalition called the Future of Tourism Coalition, which I encourage all of the listeners to check out because we've just rolled out globally 13 guiding principles. And in fact, several of the founding signatories of those principles, or at least a couple, are on this call today. So our webinar today really brings together 4 travel industry thought leaders, where each of them is moving the needle in a very responsible way for a sustainable future. And today, I think what we want to do is really kind of pull back the curtain a bit to examine the potential and the pitfalls of a responsible recovery. And today, I'm really thrilled that we've been able to assemble a group. Let me just make quick introductions. They will talk, each of our panelists will discuss in a little more detail some of the sustainability actions that they're taking. But our first panelist is Jessica Upchurch. You can see her in the screen. She's Vice Chair and Sustainability Strategist for Virtuoso. Our second panelist is Jannis Soerensen in London. He's the General Manager of the Beaumont, a very high-end and sustainable boutique hotel in London. Third is Bob Shevlin, who's co-owner of UXUA, right? Close enough. Sorry, I should know better than that. In Trancoso in Bahia, Brazil, though I believe you're transmitting from Ohio today.
Yes.
Is what I recall. And fourth is Nicole Robinson, who's the Chief Marketing Officer from andBeyond. And they will each talk about in more detail their perspectives. And what I've got is a couple of questions I'm going to raise with each panelist. You as participants have an opportunity to put questions in the chat box. We ask that you don't go off mute and do any verbal questions, certainly. But one of the things that's just to get us started is amidst this tremendous chaos and tragedy of COVID-19, we do see that there's a real opportunity for companies and destinations to take a leadership position to build a more sustainable future through a responsible recovery. And at my organization, CREST, we really see that the competitive landscape for tourism has really dramatically changed. We see that those who will be successful must embrace sustainability, not as a few small but positive steps, but rather as a more holistic approach that includes the respect and protection of natural, cultural, and spiritual elements of place, with local communities at the center. Now, in the tourism industry and sector now, we are clearly talking a lot about build back better. And we're hearing this, we're using it ourselves, and we're focusing on the safety, infrastructure, health, and economic steps that are needed. But at our panel, and over the last few days, we've also been discussing the importance of more intangible, but no less fundamental elements to a responsible recovery. And that's the all importance of collaboration and communication amongst tourism stakeholders, that all important knowledge sharing and the critical analysis of lessons learned. And so when I said at the onset that we're going to pull back the curtain a bit, one of the things we've all agreed to is that this is not going to be a panel of just happy talk and what we're all doing and how swell we are, but rather we want to focus on some hard realities and share with the participants. So with that, let us get going, and let's get to it. So my first question to my panelists, and they know the order with which we'll speak, but I will call on them, is what are tourism businesses doing to pivot in response to the profound impacts of the COVID pandemic and climate change? And how does sustainability fit into such dramatic pivots? And how does consumer trust and loyalty fit in with sustainability? Or does it? First up, I would like to go to Jessica, if you'd like to take a couple minutes and address that from your perspective at Virtuoso.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, and thank you for having me here and to be here with everyone on the call with the panelists. Thank you also to SATW as well. So very excited to be here. But great question. You know, my first is I really want to answer those in reverse order. So really, first, sustainability is absolutely fits into the trust and the loyalty component. And for us as an organization, you know, sustainability is really, it's a transformation, and it's something that's a long time coming. And what's happened in this time of COVID is a lot of our partners and advisors are taking time not to just spend time on their business, they're really spending time in their business. And by doing that, they're really looking at sustainability as a key component, because they know that there are ways that as an advisor, they can engage with their clients. And as our partners, they also know that looking at what they are doing in their part of the world is a really important piece of it. So, you know, when we're looking at this, you know, they're looking forward to these new ways of engaging and really learning how to start that conversation even more so. Because that was one of the things that we realized, that some of our advisors were nervous about just not knowing everything when it comes to sustainability. And our idea has always been, start where you are. Right? No shame, no blame. Let's start where you are. Let's own the conversation. And that's been something that we know that a lot of our advisors and our member agencies have been working with their advisors, is to just own the conversation with the client. Because we know that by doing that, you know, then they start to really understand that they can factor sustainability in a choice of their travel, which is going to be able to move us all forward here in this time. So, you know, it really is, this is a profound time. You know, we can all see the pause. I just got a really neat email. Today happens to be my birthday, so I'm getting all these birthday wishes from around the world. And one of another dear partner of ours in Africa just sent me about what's been happening at some of their camps. And it's just so interesting. And I know, you know, we have andBeyond on here with us too, which is a great Virtuoso partner. And so, you know, I think that there's a moment for us to really take that, as tough as this has been, it's really been also a great pause, and for us to really find new ways to engage and to not only just pivot now, but to continually be willing and able to pivot as we move along too, as we come into a new world and a conscious comeback, as we're calling it, alongside the build back better.
Terrific. Thanks, Jessica. And again, happy birthday. I forgot. We talked about that yesterday.
Thank
I
you.
just had mine a couple days ago, so we have some good Virgos on here.
We are the Virgos.
Let's jump to London and take a very different perspective from your perch on things, Yannis, as general manager of the Beaumont in London.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. And thank you so much for the opportunity to being with everybody here today. And Jessica, congratulations. Happy birthday. Well, I think that the COVID-19 pandemic clearly demanded a drastic and immediate pivot from all hospitality and tourism businesses across the world to include implementation of protective equipment, social distancing, deep cleansing and cleansing routines. And I think whilst elements of these changes will be undoubtedly with us until the pandemic is over, or you know, until we've learned to live with the pandemic, because I think there's more and more voices to say that, you know, the virus won't go away really. Most of us hope that these elements won't be permanent. And I think when we see all the single-use single-use plastics and gloves and masks everywhere, it's really an unsustainable practice. But the reality of climate change has until now, I think, and it's so unfortunate, not really resulted in such an immediate and dramatic pivot, even though it's by far the bigger crisis, and it truly warrants an emergency response. And I think in contrast to the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, any changes a business will make to ensure sustainability in all practices must be permanent. And I think as businesses in the tourism industry, we really have an important part to play in making sure that the impact on the planet is as minimal as possible. We must ensure that exactly that response to COVID does not mean that our response to climate change is lost or pushed on the sidelines, which I think we're seeing a little bit at the moment. I guess one of the silver linings of this pandemic is that more of us have started to question the impact of our behaviors on sustainability and on climate change itself. And consumers, I think, will become more demanding of companies and brands that actually engage with it, expecting far higher standards than they have expected prior to that when traveling. And I think they will trust and be loyal to those companies that reflect values that they have as themselves, as travelers, and companies that share their concerns, but most of all, companies that are actually acting on those. And I think as a hotel, and you know, speaking for the Beaumont, we have to look at property level, what we can do to be a sustainable business. And I think it's important that it is not just up to the guests to make these decisions or to make these sacrifices. I think there's initiatives of, for example, agreeing to use less towels, less waters, or, you know, I think we all sometimes sit in a plane or go to a hotel where you've been asked to donate your spare change for a charity that, let's say, I of the Beaumont have chosen. But I really think it's up to the hoteliers, and I think we cannot compromise that the experience that the guest actually has. And by supporting businesses that actually behave sustainable, the guest is doing good. So it's not so much about asking the guest to do good, but it's to saying, engage with us, we are doing good. And while you stay with us, you're actually reinforcing the behavior of the business. And lastly, I think at a wider level, the tourism industry really need to be more represented at government level. And that's at individual countries, but globally. And I think that we have to ensure that we're making these problems heard and address the issues that the industry will face further to the climate crisis, because it will have an ever increasing impact to the business and a far wider regional impact that COVID-19, for example, had.
Terrific, Giannis. Thank you so much for your perspective. And let's jump right to Bob Shevlin, if we can, please. Provide for us, please, Bob, your perspective, which is quite a unique one, also as an accommodation and owner, but from a very different location and perspective. So, Bob,
we thank you for the introduction. We work in Brazil, and I'm also a part of the Conservation International. I'm on the board of Conservation International and the Brazilian Luxury Travel Association. So I've been invested for years in trying to keep sustainability in tourism sector at the top of the agenda in conversation with authorities, with government officials. And I think it's very interesting the comment of Giannis. We do need to be more present with the government leaders in order to keep sustainability at the forefront. The comment that I had made yesterday when the panelists, we had a short conversation, and I had asked if it's okay if I'm not just cheerleading tone of voice in this conversation, if I can also raise a little bit of I don't think alarm is the word, but we who are invested in sustainable tourism, we really had a lot of great momentum, I think, the last 5 years. And thank you very much to the travel writers. I really want to give gratitude to you because you've played a really pivotal role in just getting that word sustainability introduced into the industry and seen by consumers, and penetrate the consciousness of the consumer so that they begin to realize they do have responsibility in their travel choices. And I think the journalists around the world have played a key role in that. And the challenge now is the mind space is crowded now, and people have a lot more to think about rather than just their responsibility when they travel. They have to think about if they're going to travel and keeping alive doing it. And it's going to be harder for us to keep sustainability in people's minds. I realize that's going to be a very big challenge, and I'm working a lot in Brazil with the media, with all of our partners, to try to keep sustainability present. The idea of a better restart of tourism, we've had time to think and slow down. I feel slightly naive because there's actually going to be tremendous economic pressure to have kind of anything goes in tourism. I anticipated that at the very beginning of the epidemic, and I think the thinking was accurate because I sense it quite a lot in South America. Bending of the rules, postponing of certain restrictions and limitations just to get the tourism motors going again. And I actually think that's the biggest challenge that we're going to face. It's hard to get people, sustainability is a long-term game, but it's very hard to get people to think long-term when the immediate and short-term are kind of dire. So that's what, on the positive side, I could say we are working hard on this, and probably during this period, maybe because we've simply had more time, but we built a much bigger coalition, at least in Brazil, for sustainability than we had prior to the pandemic. That is a good sign. So I have a mixed bag of worry and constructive things to report.
Terrific, and I sense that we're kind of we're taking a building block approach here with comments in terms of the kind of the scope and scale. Let's not be naive, definitely, and I think, Bob, your points are well taken on that, which I hope that we will circle back on that as a group in a few minutes. Let's shift gears and go to one of the premier operators and also property managers, certainly in Africa and elsewhere, from andBeyond. Nicole, let's tee up some thoughts from your end.
Well, thanks, Greg, and yes, thanks to the Society as well. I mean, I think travel writers have an awesome responsibility in terms of educating consumers around the right questions to ask. So it's a real privilege to be able to talk about a topic like sustainability that's normally filled with jargon, and not many people understand the very many facets of it. So I think it's an awesome fact that we could be on a webinar like this discussing it at this time, because I think we do sit with that opportunity to look long term and see if we can change the way we do things coming out of this. So yes, andBeyond has been around for 30 years, and impact has always been built into our business model. And so I've had the privilege of working for the brand for 20 years, and I've seen it come through quite a lot, but I've never seen anything like this. And so for us as an organization, this pandemic has really helped re-clarify for us the importance and relevance of our impact values of care of the land, wildlife, and people. It's also been the ultimate test of what happens when profit meets purpose in a dark alley. You know, who wins? Does it have to be an or you know, can it be an and? And so our business model has always been one of strict business principles centered around a really strong why or purpose, which is to leave our world a better place than we found it. And this model has been successful in generating strong impact and financial returns. And it's an and, it's not an or. So when our pipeline of forward revenue came crashing down around us, we did have the luxury of choice to continue to do what is right for our employees and the community surrounding our operations. But we also had to look at, you know, how do we carry on funding some of the conservation initiatives that happen and that are funded by our guests. So our pivot over the last 6 months has really been around creating a content platform called andBeyond Connect, where we've continued to engage our guests and our clients with authentic content from our destinations. And then we added a paid for sort of layer onto that in terms of our virtual experiences, where all the funds raised go back into the community and conservation initiatives. And I have to say, like, if you had said to me in January that we would be running virtual safaris, I would have said you're really smoking the good stuff, because nothing could ever beat the real thing. But I have been amazed that it has been an incredible medium to educate and create empathy for our wild spaces and for nature. and it will be interesting to see where we go forward as to how we use that tool. In terms of loyalty, and I really love that Jessica started with this, and happy birthday, Jessica, we know from looking back, our values have created repeat and referral business. We often note that sustainability or impact may not be the reason why we've been chosen initially as the travel partner of choice, but it's almost certainly mentioned in our feedback that we receive from guests and in the percentage of repeat and referral business that we generate. So, and I think in many ways it makes sense, because when our staff and their families in the surrounding communities are cared for, that care will translate into a guest experience in an extraordinary way, and our guests do feel that difference. So just in terms of loyalty, I think it makes a really, really big difference to that. And we're a safari company. It's not like it's not like you have to travel far to come to us. So to get repeat guests off that is quite special. There's a big commitment in terms of coming back. Yeah.
Very good. Lauren, I don't know whether there's maybe any particular, I was just thinking out loud here, but any particular questions for this particular round we might want to bring from our listeners?
Yeah, so there was one question from David Swanson, and it sort of touched on what Bob was speaking about, but his question is, I'm seeing a big retrench in travel sustainability due to COVID. Disposables in particular have become rampant. What types of solutions are being proposed so that we don't lose the hard-won forward momentum on sustainability achieved over the years?
That was teed up for Bob.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It was a little bit of what you spoke about, Bob.
This is tough. This is really, really tough. I am fortunate in my particular situation in Brazil, and I don't think my solutions are going to broadly apply, unfortunately. But when we started the hotel business back in 2008, it was part of a larger project. We wanted to preserve and extend the craft industry in our village as well, because I think that craft, it marries very well with tourism, especially if there are artisanal traditions that are strong. And we managed to actually have workshops in our village, and we're trying to come up with homemade solutions, avoiding plastics, things that are natural and disposable. But these are not solutions that are going to be applicable everywhere else. And I see also very broad challenges simply in transport, and I don't have answers for it. Whereas it used to be possible to, we had 99% of our guests over the last 10 years agree with us that they don't need to rent a car. I'm very proud of that. Alice Marshall's worked with us for a long time, and they know that that was always part of my objective. If they ask for one, try to talk them out of it, convince them to come stay, try a couple days without it. We have bicycles, horses, and we've been very successful at that. But right now, I see a big increase in people wanting to have their own cars. They want to move independently. They want privacy. Actually, people being together was sustainable. Grouping people together and group activities, and the trend that we're going to have right now is going to be very hard to combat, at least in the short term. So I don't have a great news on that part. The great news is that hopefully eventually we pass this period and we can get back into selling to sustainability.
Jessica,
Yeah,
I want to make sure we have as much interaction from our panelists as possible. So I'm kind of mixing it up a little bit more than I thought I was going to. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just make kind of a quick comment, because, our viewpoint is a bit different at Virtuosos, because we hear what a lot of our partners are doing globally, right? And we also have the advisors and the member component. So what I know from what we've heard, because we also have a sustainability council that's very engaged in our organization as well too, is people are also looking at their supply chains. So meaning that they too themselves are looking to companies that actually are utilizing different types of material that can be repurposed, that can be more compostable. that possibly can be, because we are 100%, we all on this call know there's more plastic out here. And it's a crushing moment, because we were all very much focused in the travel and hospitality industry to really, eliminate single-use plastic. That's been a huge initiative as a travel and hospitality industry as a totality to really focus on. So that goes back to the whole idea of when we do start educating people and the consumer to start making choices about companies that align with our values. And Janice, you were referring to that a bit too, pointing towards that direction. It's so critical to this. So when we're looking at our supply chains and our partners are demanding to purchase from companies, that also changes Wall Street. That also connects into what our politicians are doing. That changes what's happening on the market space. So I know that several of our partners are looking at their cleaning supplies that they're utilizing to make sure that the chemicals in there are safe for the planet and the people, so they don't go into the watershed. So I think they are, again, when I was saying earlier about the working on versus in, people are trying to be very mindful and conscious about what they're doing in their part of the world, because every part is different too, right? From our partners in Iceland, to our partners in London, to our partners in Africa, to our partners in Brazil, what you all can all do globally for what's really in your own backyard. So we're finding a best practice to kind of bring this together, Greg, as you were mentioning as well too, that I think is a really important, just to kind of plus to what everybody is saying here.
Absolutely. Nicole or Yanis, thoughts? Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I think to echo Jay, I'm a big believer that if you ask the best questions, you will chase them to find the best answers. And I'm a big believer in collaboration as well. And so I think when you seek to find a solution that asks, how can we make people safe and not damage the planet? And you find the right partners and acknowledge the local context, you will find a solution that is right in each place if that's the question that you ask. If you're only asking one of those questions separately to each other, you might not land up with the right answer. But I love the question, how might we? Because it just opens up possibility. It's got the we in it from a collaboration perspective, but it uses the word how, which opens your mind to various types of solutions. And we got somebody onto the moon. We've done stuff on Mars. You can't tell me that there aren't technology solutions that, when asked the right questions and when we put ourselves with the right people, we can do the right thing. It all comes down to the courage to ask, to be vulnerable. Like Jessica said, no shame, no blame. Like, I don't have all the answers here, but if I seek out correctly the right people who are asking the same questions, we will find the right answers. And I think that, for me, is the most powerful thing you can do as a group of people all around the world. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm hearing from our panelists some very important values being expressed, whether it's being courageous, critical, Bob, in the case, choices. Jessica, you've mentioned something which is a real pet point for me always, because we're always defined by our choices. Yanis, you just posted, and I encourage all the participants on the webinar today to keep an eye on the chat, because I know some of our panelists have been posting also some website links, some URL links that I think will provide you with a wealth of additional information. Yanis, did you have anything you wanted to comment on this particular round? Otherwise, we'll go to my second question.
Sure. I love what everybody was saying about it. I think the one big point is that sustainability needs to be the base of your decisions and not sort of the aftermath of your decision. And I think if you look at, even, personal protective equipment, there is great companies out there that make, sustainable masks, if they need to be one-time use out of, recyclable material. But there's great solutions out there from companies who make, great multiple use masks that you can clean. As Jessica said, we use a completely biodegradable cleaning materials at the hotel. And it's not either good quality or sustainable, or either cheap or sustainable. You can find really sustainable, cheap solutions that actually have the best results. It doesn't need to be the compromise. And I think if we base the decisions or our search project for something we need to deal with on the base that we only consider things that are sustainable in the first place before they even get into the room, that's really how we need to look at it.
Gregory, I might have one final comment.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I sensed body language there about that too. Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
I want to say one thing on the positive side from the hotel sector. I don't come from a hotel background, and the project of a hotel we opened in 2008 was totally new territory for me. And one of the things I discovered, which actually surprised me, was that hotels collaborate with each other. I didn't really know that, because I come from the fashion background and we didn't collaborate at all. We always had our knives in each other's backs. But that was the culture, let's say. I didn't do that, but the hotel industry was very different. When we had a problem in a hotel, we could call another one, and they could help us out, and we would share information about clients, and it was generally very goodwill. And that level of collaboration has actually increased now. And the sharing of ideas and approaches and how to deal with this situation and be creative about the solutions. Actually, those ideas are very free-flowing right now in the industry. Nobody is trying, that I've seen, trying to monopolize or be opportunistic about it. Our hotel's cleaner than that one, or no. People want to find solutions for the entire industry so travelers will feel good, and ideally we will come up with some sustainable routes. Everybody is aware that the plastics, nobody's feeling good about this. Nobody's feeling good at all about this. So I do think solutions will come collectively.
Yeah, without question, and in the onset of my brief remarks, I wanted to emphasize that sort of intangible of collaboration as being the sort of the new competitive advantage almost for the industries to sharing those lessons. Let me get to my second question. In my opening remarks, I commented on the taking a more holistic approach to sustainability that considers natural, cultural, and even spiritual elements to place. And putting that out in essence as a hypothesis for the future of travel. So my question to each of our panelists is going to be, from your business perspective, what does this type of sustainability really look like? And how does it relate to supporting destinations and communities in addition to your bottom line? And Jessica, we're going to again start with you, please.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Great question. So, the first thing that I want to that I really just want to say is, sustainability is expanding and contracting. I think is all you've kind of heard from all of us, right? Expanding in some areas and contracting in the other areas, depending on which pillar you're really looking at. Whether we're looking at the planet, we're looking at the cultural, natural heritage, and the spiritual evolution, or we're looking at the local economies. And I think we can all globally agree right now, local economies is kind of risen to the forefront more in some of the small businesses that are really suffering out here. So I think right now, even though we do know all the plastics are happening, so we've had this downside, this contracting component that's happening on the planet side that's really, bothersome to all of us, here on this call today too. So, but what we're seeing is, so now we have this focus, so we put local economies first, and we're really understanding the power of what that means globally around the world and how we can uplift more and, people from that place. So, when we're looking at this, the other thing that we're finding is we're having more tourism boards start coming to us when it's about sustainability. So hopefully, Bob, and some of your comments, we do know tourism boards are wanting to know about this more and more. They're really wanting to engage more. We have a sustainability community as part of our organization where all the partners and the members and tourism boards can become a part of our community. And again, it's something that Matthew and I have just funded in our company because we too feel very much it's important for us to collaborate to really bring more people along. So we've been able to really get more tourism boards. And I think it's also really, another piece of the puzzle that I just want to mention here that I think is really important is, when we're looking at the destinations and we're looking at what's happening, is digging deeper and finding the actual needs at all the places in the world in which we travel and where we all exist and live. Because actual needs of community are really the way we fulfill what is happening in real time. Sometimes, when we're standing back, that's why we do reach out to, Nicole with andBeyond and the people there, and they really understand what is going on in their very backyard. And then we as an organization, when we are talking to our advisors and we're educating our advisors to talk to their clients, in that consumer piece of it. So they understand what really is happening out here on a very, from voice to voice, from true story to story, right? So that we can really share that going forward. So, you know, I think that by doing all of this too, I mean, you've mentioned, the bottom line piece of it, in our Under One Sky, we actually were really able to show that we had this funnel, that really we do see that consumer choice is changing the way we all function out here. And we do know that funds and companies that are doing good on Wall Street are actually doing better in this economic time than ever before, which is actually a complete juxtaposition when you're looking at Wall Street. And that's a very, very, very powerful thing, because Josh Kent said it best, and Nicole, I've got to give him it because I love it, when he said that profit and purpose can exist on the same balance sheet. And I think that's one of the most brilliant quotes I have heard. So I'm giving Josh the kudos for that, because I think that is when we're really looking at how we're going to go forward, how we're looking at the destinations, how we're looking at all the components of sustainability. I think we know that we can extract and, we can contract and expand, but, as you said, Greg, we've got some values here that we're aligning. And it was great to, Bob, to hear what you said about just, you see the travel and hospitality industry coming together, because we feel very strongly that the real economic recovery of the planet is going to be when we have a conscious comeback and we build back better in this industry, because we know the velocity of the currency actually truly makes the biggest difference through the travel and hospitality industry. And it will bring more people jobs again. It will educate more children again. It will bring more women and diversity back to the planet, which it already always has done, but it will bring it alive in a whole new way.
Terrific, Jessica. Thanks so much. Really appreciate that perspective. Giannis, let's go to you as an urban hotel general manager, a very different perspective. And I hope our panelists are watching the chat questions, because there was one particularly interesting question that focused on how important it has been for us to have the perspective of Bob from a much more of a rural, if I may say, in Bahia, which I think is correct and very exotic. And then, of course, one of these significant urban destinations, tourist destinations in the world, London. So Giannis, let's come to your perspective, please.
Right. Well, I think for city hotels, it's interesting. I think some 20 years ago or so, sustainability was not really part of any agenda of a city hotel. And I think even still today, sustainability programs are a great to have. But I really think that in the time span of maybe 5 years or so, it's just going to be a non-negotiable. And I think we can see already sort of beginnings of measurement of that. So you see third parties or websites and organizations that start rating city hotels as well as airlines on CO2 emissions. And so I think what's beginning right now for city hotels is that the consumer will be in possession of this information, and it will allow them actually to make a rather educated choice of where they are going to stay and who they're going to travel with, really. I think, of course, the space at the moment is a little bit confused still, and I think there's quite a few different programs around, and I've no doubt that this will become much clearer over the next couple of years. Of course, on property level, as I mentioned, sustainability really impacts all part of the hotel operation, also in a city hotel. And it starts really from the design of the building, the lighting, utilities, energy consumption, but building and decoration materials that we're using, limiting waste, improving recycling. Where do you buy your consumables? Food sourcing, local food sourcing, ethical food sourcing, the elimination of single-use plastics or unsustainable materials. And, we're working at the moment at an ethical purchasing policy. So the vast majority of these things we have addressed at the moment, and we're continuing to address it. It's one of the things that we realize is that it's just never ending. I think one thing leads to the next, and the space is also changing. So it's just so important to keep educating yourself and evolving on that journey. It really resonated with me what Nicole was saying earlier. And I've mentioned that, sustainability does not necessarily need to cost money, but I think we must all acknowledge as well that it's not all about saving money while being sustainable in the immediate short term, next quarter. I think we need to realize that we won't make any money long term if we're not investing in this. And the short term, yes, there might be a cost to implement some of these things. You need to implement policies, but on the long term, the business won't be profitable if it's not sustainable in all of these practices. And I think hotel operators need sometimes to have difficult and probably educational conversations with their ownership. And I think we cannot and we should not argue that over the short term, expenses, especially now with COVID-19, will go up in this. I think in terms of supporting local communities, I have to be quite honest. I think with this pandemic, we've seen some fantastic initiatives undertaken by hotels in cities to support their frontline workers, the homeless, those less fortunate. But, you know, as an executive team as well at the Beaumont, we sort of spoke about this a lot, and we said, actually, do we do enough of this? Like, did we do enough of this in 2019? And how will we addressing it? And is this just something right now for the short term, or do we actually need to be so much more out in this space? Because community outreach, of course, is so different when you have a small hotel somewhere in the savannah or on a small island in the South Pacific, or you're in Mayfair. And I think, but it doesn't mean that we can't reach out to the neighborhood more, and that we support, you know, people in need more than we might have done in the past in a city hotel. And maybe we've taken not enough responsibility on that. And I feel that this pandemic has shown light on that.
Bob, let's shift the spotlight to your perspective or lens on the world, which is very much a different one than being in obviously an urban setting.
Is definitely different, and definitely the circumstance of the COVID was a bit more dramatic in my scenario, because the village where we operate, it lives on tourism. It is an economy that just runs on that. And probably, I have to say, I'm going to need some separation between this moment in the future to really look back on this. But I'm very proud of how my industry, and I'm proud of myself also because I worked very hard. We were all devastated. Everybody shut down, but it was the moment to really take care of the community, because our community was going to starve basically during this period. People know about Brazil. It's I'm not sure how many have been there. It's not everything that it appears to be by the global media profile of it, but it is a place where there is a big wealth gap, and people who don't have money, they really don't have money. They don't have savings. They're not prepared for disasters. Nobody was prepared for COVID, but the town found itself very unprepared. But we were able to start very spontaneously. We got all the hotels just to say, let's finish our stock of food that we all have, and let's distribute it in the community. We shut down from one day to the next and just started putting meals out in the community. But that project transformed into something called, our town is called Trancoso. It was called Alimenta Trancoso, Feed Trancoso. And even I'm actually quite surprised, because it's hard to get people to donate in Brazil. They don't have a great record for charity. But we actually did a pretty remarkable job of getting donations from owners of businesses, but then also from our clients all around the world, including the United States, to give us money so we could buy foodstuffs, sanitary things, even children's toys and things for Trancoso families. And it's a town of about 30,000, and we've probably been feeding 6,000 people during this period. And it's been a remarkable success. Even I'm surprised, because it's not always easy to organize things in Brazil. But our director of community relations is in charge of the charity, and there are hundreds and hundreds of donors. Why I tell that long story is not just to promote myself for doing good. It's actually not the point of the story. The point of the story is that this elevated the role of the hospitality industry in this very bad time when everyone was running for the hills, all the other businesses running. The hospitality industry stepped up and showed the community that we care about them. And it's something I've been trying to sell to them for 10 years. But being an environmentalist there, I'm also quite a person who suffers from fake news, and there is a counter movement to sustainability in places like Brazil, where people say they don't want you to work, they don't want everyone to have jobs, because of course we are combating free-for-all tourism and abusive mass tourism that has a high impact, and that can be controversial. But this period now has really elevated the sustainable tourism segment, showing how much it actually does care for the community. And of course we care for the community. That's exactly what we're all in the business for, is to be able to have authenticity, healthy community, 5-star hotel, 5-star community. This concept is really real. And we got to show it during the pandemic, unquestionably, through the most vital and simple way possible, is just feeding people. So it's been a very, very interesting experience for us.
Thanks, Bob. I know I'm watching the clock and realizing time is going, and I want to make sure we have a chance for Nicole, you know, from your perspective on destination, community, and the bottom line.
So funny, as you tell me to talk, the rain has just started coming down. So I do apologize if there's a whole lot of background noise, but we just had our first rain. Yeah, I think in terms of holistic sustainability and what that looks like, Yanis's point about taking a longer term time frame, I think the irony for me is that the definition of sustainability is that something lasts for a long time or is there for a long time, but we have such an impatience around seeing a return or seeing an impact in a short amount of time. I had a friend the other day who said to us, you know, we don't build cathedrals anymore. We've got such an impatient instant gratification culture that leads us to drive certain decisions. And so I think that point about getting your investors to have patient capital or nurture capital is an incredible one to make a difference to the decisions that are made every day. Like I mentioned before, for us, there's a breadth and a depth to sustainability. So there's a breadth around, we focus on care of land, which is all of our earth impact, our resource utilization initiatives around water and carbon. We have care of the wildlife, where we focus on endangered species, and we have care of the people, which is how we share, the economic benefits of travel with the community surrounding our operations. And so that, there is a breadth there, but that breadth can also be overwhelming for a lot of businesses that try to do this. And so we started an initiative in 2017 where we set ourselves, it even became overwhelming for ourselves. So we set ourselves some clear goals that we felt we could achieve in a 3-year time frame. Because the one thing with sustainability is that there is so much you could do, and there's trade-offs. There's trade-offs, even as Bob was talking around, you have people who come, but they want to hire a car. So shouldn't they come because now they're increasing the carbon footprint of the car, but then the communities won't get the local benefit if the tourists don't come. And so there's these constant trade-offs. And so what we found helpful is to focus, we set goals in each 3 of these, of our pillars, land, wildlife, and people. And we set a goal under each one of them, 3 goals under each one of them that we could focus the business on. And what I have to say is that increase in focus and forgiveness and transparency has shifted we were already an impact-led organization, but those, in terms of looking at how sustainability can work practically in an organization to actually get stuff done without being overwhelmed by all of the things that we think we need to fix today, we can look and say, what few things can we fix? Can we get those right? And then can we move on to the next? And if we start taking a longer term view with our shareholders, being able to have the patience to wait to see a return on some of those initiatives, you can really make a big difference. And profit and purpose, like Jessica said, can live on the same piece of paper. But I do think, there's that and again that comes into every, it's not something you bolt on once you make a profit. It's in every single bit of your operation. How do you ask the question, how can I do this and that? And the possibilities are there.
Perfect. I've been looking through the chat and I wanted to pick out one, excuse me, Lauren, but I noticed one in particular from Ethan Gelber that is something that is certainly resonating with a lot of us right now. And it's his question is looking at, how I've described as the holistic approach to sustainability, but how does identity, that is race, gender, sexual orientation, mental and physical disability, fit into this? And how might, the continuum of tourism operations, from operators to hotels to travel advisors, be addressing this? This is particularly acute right now, as I think everyone is aware, in the United States because of tremendous inequities. And I probably shouldn't even go there because it's so prominent. It'll get me all worked up. But I wanted to raise that, and I know we're fast approaching the witching hour here, but I think this is something that is really important. So let me open that up. Who on the panel would like to? Nicole, I've been putting you at sort of the tail end of this, so I'm going to give you first crack at this. What have been your thoughts in terms of how to address this as part of sustainability, identity, and social inequity, in essence, from your perspective?
Yeah, I guess there's quite a very different components to that, and it's a real tricky question. I think the one thing that we know is that travel, when aimed in the right direction, can really be a force for good because of the way it increases tolerance and understanding for people, places, and cultures that are different to what you know or have experienced. And so that mind opening that happens when you travel can only be good to address some of the issues that we've seen in the past around diversity and inclusivity. So the challenge, is making sure that specifically when we talk about sustainability, and we come from a high yield, low volume, or low volume, high yield business model where we talk to the luxury segment. I guess the challenge that we have to face is how do we influence and make sure travel is sustainable in terms of giving access to everybody to be able to travel while minimizing the impact of more people traveling on places. I guess that's the way that we've tried to frame the problem to try to find the right answers to that, as to how do we influence. It's quite, I think we can sit, it's quite easy for us to say, we charge a high rate, so therefore it's easier for us to focus on impact. It's a lot harder for the high volume, low yield hospitality models to find the right answers. And so I guess for us, it's looking to how to influence those organizations, or how can we even change some of our business models to make it more accessible so that the benefits of travel can be realized for all. Because just for the wealthy to travel, or just a certain set of people to travel, whatever color, creed, race, religion, sexual orientation, that itself isn't inclusive either. So for us in the sustainability chat, that's the challenge that we're trying to balance.
Let's build on that for a moment. Thanks, Nicole. That was terrific. For our other panelists, we have a real kind of conflict almost occurring in society, because, if I may, because from whether you're a hotel or travel advisor operations, and from that lens, you have the individual traveler, and is it an equitable and accessible experience on the one hand, and I think there's big question marks, and is that sustainable down the line? The other is from the operation on the ground. Is there a fair and equitable distribution of opportunity for local people to work in the operation, to be paid a fair wage? In fact, at Crest, one of our 4 top challenges now that we've seen strategically is to address the inequitable distribution of wealth in the tourism economy because of that. Because the wealth isn't shared. And we know that, and this is a black eye for tourism. There's no question about that. So let me kind of take from where you were, Nicole, if I can, for the couple minutes we still have. And who would like to kind of address sort of that conundrum of the traveler, the equity or inequity of, and the sustainability for the traveler perspective, as well as, of course, at the destination. Jessica, what are your thoughts in terms of, I'll pick on you, in terms of from travel advisors? I mean, how are they addressing this, or are they?
Well, no, absolutely, it's being addressed, and it's a very important, and it is a very complex answer to a most important question. And so I can kind of take it again. We have as I always said, we sometimes have this global view that not everybody, has because of our organization. So the first thing that we did, because we do have an inclusive and diversity program that's really happening very much within Virtuoso right now, and what we're putting out to all of our partners and our advisors. And it kind of goes back to the actual needs when people were, when this was really coming alive. And what it is when when we're looking at this conundrum, and when we're looking at how we can educate, and knowing what I said earlier about just even the velocity of currency, right? So when you're looking at where you can actually pass currency from one human to another, that's a really important piece of the puzzle in our travel and hospitality industry. Because when you can pass a currency, right, depending on whatever amount that may be, and getting fair wages and getting equitable wages out here, and getting the right people in here to train them to be able to be a part of the travel and hospitality industry, that's a piece of the puzzle. The other thing that we are, when we are looking at it as well too, is that, when we're trying to bring more people together, we also know that the industry as a whole is one of the most diverse industries on the planet, if not the diverse. And in fact, that's some of the research we've been trying to kind of put our hands around, because we've done some other research through UGA with sustainability, so that the very nature of when we travel, we are actually touching more cultures. We are touching more, sexual identities. We are touching more women. We are touching, more diversity, and more people of color on all levels and all spectrums, right? So then when it comes to the wealth component of it and that whole diversity, one of the things, and I think, Bob, you mentioned it too, there is this philanthropic component of it that is also very important, right? Because I think there's also a way, what's happening is a lot of the travelers that we also come in contact with through Virtuoso, we also know through stories with our partners that they actually leave much larger amounts of money to our partners around the world, because they already know that they have identified those needs, and they are taking those monies and doing very well and implementing those monies, and all of the ethical components that come with it. They're in their own backyards as well too. So it goes back to what you were saying too, Greg. I think as we're, opening this very real, very raw, very important, vulnerable conversation, it's to be able to say that, we are looking at this, over and over and over again as an industry, right? That's so important, and to keep learning from each other, because again, in parts of the world, it's very different. And so how somebody in South Africa, deals with it versus in Brazil versus in London versus here. And I can promise you in the state of Texas, it's different. But if we can all share and know we've got this common horizon of trying to find the good and the right way forward to really improve everybody's lives, keep the planet alive, to really be able to see our sameness, our oneness, and celebrate our differences, I think that's a really important piece for us to continually look together for the way forward.
Bob, I saw your hand go up. We have about 1 minute. Did you want to?
Okay, I just want to say, yeah, I absolutely believe that travel can be a force for change, for expanding minds, raising tolerance, and it must aim to elevate the people working in it. It has to. That has to be the goal. And I support concrete things and not abstract. For me, I pay for university of the people who work with us, and we are on top of them every day to actually sign up and go. And we've had 20 people from our hotel get college degrees, all Black, in a town where there was no college graduates when I got there. So I'm just a small hotel.
Tangible.
That's tangible, and I'm trying to sell that idea in all across Brazil, because Brazil does have a race problem. And this is just one really simple thing hotels can do: pay for tuition and push people to go. And we get a new class of Black managers in our industry. And when the world comes to Brazil, they're going to see that this is a culture, a society with a lot of diversity and opportunity for everyone.
And they're being trained in hotel management, tourism?
No, actually, I don't care what they study.
Okay, so it's not restricted. Terrific.
I want them to get a college degree, and I want them to change the trajectory of their future.
Okay. Okay, great. Giannis, maybe 30 seconds, and then I think they're going to pull the plug on us. So
some fabulous points, and I don't want to repeat them. I think just to add to that, I think we always need to consider that we have a problem. And speaking on an organizational basis, I think it's very important for leadership to not be complacent about it and to really create feedback loops and always assume that something is not quite right, to stay very sensitive to the topic and not sort of just assume that things are fine or things are going to work themselves out. And as with sustainability, you know, it's important not to create a subcommittee or something that the new intern runs, but really make it a part of the leadership journey of each individual property for these aspects to be front and center of the most senior people in the building, while allowing various ways of feedback loops of how the entire team can feed into it and say if something is not right, because otherwise we're not progressing.
terrific. We are out of time, and rather than being pulled off the air, I'll close things down. We had a number. Well, first I want to thank our tremendous panelists. We could, I think, easily spend the afternoon really delving deeper, and I would have loved to have been able to get a more dynamic conversation with our many participants. But I think we at least got to scratch the surface on a few of the questions. Lauren, I think it would be terrific if we could, you know, afterwards, as we get the recording, take a look at the various questions that were raised in the chat, and then see if our panelists don't mind, if there are specific questions in there that were addressed to one or collectively, that we share that with our panelists and see if we can get some additional input so that we leave no stone unturned, so to speak. So again, on behalf of certainly my organization, the Center for Responsible Travel, our partners here as panelists, and then of course for Alice Marshall, Public Relations, and all the great members of STAW, I want to thank everybody. Hope this was rewarding, and stay safe and take care of each other. Thank you now.
Thanks, Greg. Fascinating, fascinating. Can we do this again? We just didn't have enough time. I would love to talk to Lauren about organizing another one in another month or two, because it's just rich and so important for the journalists and for tourism leaders. It's just astonishing. It's wonderful.
And certainly if we can target things that are of particular, and perhaps even if I may be bold, there are likely some key questions within our chat that could form the basis for an additional conversation, if that were to be of interest. I'm not committing for any of our panelists here, but certainly we can discuss with Lauren and her team at the appropriate time. We just want to be useful and engaged with our colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Next week, same time, same bat channel, Tuesday at 1 Eastern time. Jane Wooldridge has put together a fabulous panel of tour operators and how tour operators are needing to pivot, how they're doing with that. So Jessica, you're going to be interested in that, I'm sure. Anyway, next Tuesday. Thank you all. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, Bob, Giannis, and Nicole. Really terrific across the continents. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.